Okay, folks, here we go.
Here we go. Let's have a good show.
1B, stand by.
Yeah.
Yacht, stand.
Yeah,
Take it.
take it. And
Take
just go
it.
right now. Go to camera 3.
Can
3.
you
Go
put-
to the gate.
Thank you.
Perfect. Just like that.
I'll just go ahead.
Yeah. Graphics 2 is going to be up for the first.
Okay.
Take it.
Right
Go right now. Go to camera 3. Go. Yep.
Let's go.
Can you
Go
put-
to the gate. Perfect. Just like that. No music.
I'm going to hand to Q. Sophie.
Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it.
Radio.
Fine,
Be
I'm
on
gonna
radio
hand
in the Canal Zone.
All right, guys, mic check.
Go ready.
Okay, Ricky, mic.
Yep, I am ready.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
Willie, mic check.
Yep, let's go.
1B, stand.
10,
couple minutes.
9,
1B, stand.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Okay, and go for it, guys.
Panama days. Here we go, guys. We are live 8 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Pacific time, and 7 o'clock Canal Zone time. Ricky, happy Friday to you, man. At the Balboa
Happy
Yacht
Friday. It is Canal. I love that. 7 o'clock, Canal Zone time.
Club. Yeah, right.
Yep, happy hour. Let me wet the whistle here before I get started with tonight's show. Welcome, everybody, to our weekly happy hour at the Balboa Yacht Club. It's a Friday night podcast that brings you the Canal Zone right to your living rooms. And we love chatting with you regarding our history, our towns, soon our architecture, our construction
Looking
days.
forward to that, man.
Looking forward to that. Me too. All that. And not only that, we tell you all about what's going on in the social scene within the Canal Zone community. Thank you, like always, for joining us. It's a place where we always say everybody knows your name. And that is a fact. Listen, guys, thank you. We have a great show tonight. Willie and I are going to be presenting you with some great stuff.
Yeah.
Cheers to the
Salud.
eighth wonder of the world.
Yes, indeed. It is a great show. And cheers to you, Johnny McGee. Hope you're safe out there wherever you are. Johnny McGee, you never know where he's at.
Johnny
The other day, he
McGee,
sent
brother of the
video of showing the crew compartment on his flight, on Delta flight. I forget from where it was, but it was going out to South Korea on one of those new A350 Airbuses. That was pretty cool, man. So, but yeah, salute to you and everybody else, of course. And what Ricky was mentioning just a moment ago, guys, the whole architecture thing. Next month is we're going to start a new monthly segment about the architecture in Panama, because, you know, in Panama, especially the zone in particular.
Canal Zone. I mean, we are going to cover 1 billion specific that's in Panama.
I would have to guess it would be the train station.
No, actually, the French building. You know, when it was the French Canal.
right,
Building.
right.
Did it-
Well, but you also
did it
want
transfer over to us?
Remember, because the original Panama train station in the Pacific and in Cologne
We're
was
in the
Panama.
yeah. No, the list is long, guys. Well, we got a lot of architecture to talk about.
Yeah, and that should be a good show. I'm excited for that, because it's something that as you guys know, you know, and I always joke around, you know, Art Vandelay, and the reason I do that obviously is a Seinfeld reference if you're not familiar with it, but George Costanza always wanted to be an architect, and he always used the Art Vandelay was the name that he threw out there. But Ricky is an architect, right? And so architecture is big.
It's in my DNA. Learned it in 8th grade in Kurundu when I started. Until today, I haven't stopped.
Yeah.
Mr. B. Boating, haven't seen you, but thank you. Thank you for joining us. Hello and welcome.
Yeah, I know it's and again, I'm excited for that, because the architecture in the Canal Zone was very unique. It wasn't as varied as what you're used to here in the United States, or for that matter in Panama City itself. It was very regimented, I guess you could say. There was just
no
a few different
frills, but
styles.
you know, it's coming back. Architecture today is no frills. Same thing, you know, just
Right,
like
right.
the art. just
Well, it
like
was
back in the
it
day.
was built for efficiency, as we've learned, especially in the 50s. They switched to, you know, a different type of construction and stuff that was designed to better handle the weather and the elements and whatnot. But it was a unique style, and Edith Barkowitz Crouch put out an incredible book, The Architecture of the Panama Canal Zone.
Yes,
and
a lot of our information is coming from this book.
Yeah, it's a massive book, guys. It is just like a gigantic book, but it is just the absolute, if there's a collection of books that you need to have, the true Zonian book collection, right? What's the one, the famous one of the canal construction?
Not Path Between the Seas.
Yeah, Path Between the Seas. I always say that's
Caused
one.
so much trouble for us. Anyways,
does,
it is a good book. It is a good book.
It's considered a standard when it comes to understanding construction of the canal. There's some areas in there that are, have some opinions that it's, but notwithstanding, that's one of those there. And this book here is certainly one of those books, right? That it's a must-have book. If you want to have a true Zonian collection, go online and find that book and order it. It's kind of pricey, but it is a book that you will not be able to put down because it's
coffee table book for sure.
100%.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, the first building I'm going to talk about is the Tivoli. So guys, get ready for that. But not only the architecture, all the stuff that was going around, Willie, at that time, where the Tivoli was located, where Kurundu is, like Frangipani and what's that one going the other way was International, I guess it was called.
Yeah, well, that was that area where Shaler Triangle was.
Well, that was the elite part of Panama.
Correct.
That's where all the, like my parents hung out in that area. So when I talked to my mom about, I said, hey, Mom, did you ever go to the Tivoli? That's like, oh, yeah, that was all part of it. That's all in our neighborhood. So it was like Panama's elite and the Canal Zone kind of all hung out in that area of where the Tivoli is.
Yeah,
like,
no, it absolutely was. It was
where
amazing.
today we look at it like, it's across the street from a very,
rundown poor area.
Yeah, rundown area, but not really a rundown, but you know what I'm saying, like a workers area and whatnot.
Sure.
But on the other side, which we grew up with that Kruin area being, again, even lower, really, really scummy. But at one time it wasn't. It was like the elite part of Panama City. Sure. It's where Panama City first started coming out of Casco Viejo and Santa Ana and where Las Centrales.
Well, and just in the Canal Zone itself, going back to what we're talking about doing this segment of architecture, Balboa itself, which is considered the hub, the capital, one could argue, of the Canal Zone, went through a massive change.
We're gonna do a study on the piece on the layout of Balboa.
It was, and to me, the most impressive thing about that entire change was that it wasn't just tear down houses and put new ones there. They tore everything out, including the roads, and redid the whole shape of the town. It was really amazing what they did there to transform Balboa.
Well, El Prado maintained on this side of El Prado towards from El Prado towards St. Mary's. All that was redone.
Yeah, El Prado was part of the official construction plan of the canal. And that
up
was
to about Gavilan, and then so between Gavilan and El Prado, everything in between, and those are all concrete houses.
Yeah,
except for the ones on Morgan Avenue. Those still remain wood, and we learned last week from Dave that's where the quarry was.
That's where the bottom end of it was.
Bottom end of it,
where you collected all the rock and product to take out from there. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is gonna be awesome, guys. But that's June. We're still in May, and May of course is Panama Canal month. Okay, we are doing everything Panama Canal. Today we're going to be doing early excavation. We're going to be doing the first year and change of the Panama Canal, 1904. Go into a little bit of 1905. Next week, we're going to have Captain Andrew Eftimitis is going to join us, talk about sailing through the Panama Canal, focus on the locks, especially the original locks, because we're going through that original Panama Canal component of it. And then the week after, and Bill Duffus just chimed in and said hello, Bill. Jim Duffus will be joining us talking about the Gatun locks. Because the Gatun locks, unlike on the Pacific side, the Gatun locks took you from sea level to lake level all in one shot. Right, you went up through 3 chambers there, whereas on the Pacific side, you hit Miraflores, you went up a little bit, you kept going, hit Pedro Miguel, went up further, and then you were lake level. It was different in Gatun, and so he's going to tell us all about that entire operation of the Gatun locks, and then following that, then the last week of the month, we're going to have the Cohen brothers, David Cohen, who's a tugboat captain, and Maurice Cohen, who works for a canal supply company that supports shipments and vessels that are using the canal. In fact, when the
that was a big component of the Canal Zone too, was all those families that had those side businesses.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
on La Boca Row was a couple of those companies.
There was some there, and remember we had I think it was the class of '89
Oh yeah, from the other
and
side.
Bernard Joseph from the Atlantic side, his family was part of those shipping
Part of those,
agents.
yeah.
They were British and whatnot. But Maurice and his outfit, they were involved with the Nimitz. When we saw that a couple of weeks ago, the Nimitz was in Panama, and remember they had that big dock section attached to the back of the ship. That's his company that does that stuff, that sets up those docks and sets up different things to work and supply with the ships, repair them, and all those other things. So, again, it's going to be an entire month of everything Panama Canal. And again, today we're going to start with some construction stuff. But before we do that, of course, we're going to have some announcements of some things going on, reunions around the corner. And then Ricky's got some really cool bochinche, some stuff going on in Panama, because there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on in Panama.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, Mr. Ansus. Yes, it's not the same design, but it's very similar in concept. With the veranda, the enclosed porches, and of course the fans. Yeah, functional to move the air around, which is the tropical thing. The Canal Zone architecture, guys, was known as early 20th century tropical architecture. That's the style.
And here's something interesting. You mentioned that you're going to start with the Tivoli there. And Daniel Koklicher is mentioning here that he stayed at the hotel in March before it closed. That's awesome. I don't honestly, other than pictures, I don't remember it as a kid. I don't. And obviously it got torn down when I was much younger. So I'm pretty sure I never stayed there.
No more. Listen, if my parents went, they hung out with your parents. So
right.
If I went as a kid, and they took Roby as well.
True.
So no, you guys must have been like really little kids, because they closed in 71 and you guys were born like 69.
I was born 67, so
67. So you guys were
I wouldn't remember.
Yeah, DeLucas, Benninghoff, and Royals.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So my mom said, they took us for a couple times, but you're right. I truly don't remember either, man. I mean, I kind of remember, but I don't remember at all.
Yeah, no, we were at that age where that wasn't something that we would.
Because it was Sunday.
It was either somewhere you hung out or you're not going to remember it.
Right, it was Sunday, right. So you either wanted to watch football or go to St. Mary's Church at 6, because that was another big thing for the Balboa kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The 6 o'clock mass.
Yeah, so
especially if you played for the Rams, you had to sit in the back left where the organ.
But Daniel, the third week in June is when we do our architecture. So stay tuned for that, because like Ricky said, he's going to be talking all about the Tivoli. That should be a very interesting. I got
some great pictures, great stories, some floor plans. I got everything.
Yeah.
Who the contractors were, how they got the materials there. Oh my God.
So
city planning, neighborhood. Forget about it.
Yeah, no, that's all Ricky's alley there. So he's like a pig in shit putting this thing together.
Yeah. And I'm gonna have always gonna have a guest with me too. The first one's gonna be Mr. Juan Posada, who's a historian of Canal Zone architecture.
Very much is. So it's a great fit. It's a great way to kick it off there, because it should be
and I'll bring some artists on too.
Yeah,
Matt.
Yeah, Matt Tomlin. Yeah, it would have been great to have Al Sprague on, who actually joined us last year, and that was a great, actually 2 years ago now, almost a year and a half ago. Great interview. If you didn't get a chance to see that, guys, it's September, I think, of 2024.
Wow,
was when he joined us.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was, man, but it was a fantastic interview, because it was all about Al Sprague's childhood, growing up as a Zonian, and of course we talked a little bit about his art, but really it was about his life as a Zonian. And let me tell you, I mean, if there's ever a textbook Zonian, he checked off quite a few of those boxes,
absolutely. When we do talk about his art, though, Willis, when we bring his daughter on and his grandson, and then we definitely get into the art part of it.
Yeah, well, and recently, the anniversary of his passing just very recently. So I know they've been having some specials at PanamaArts.com. So check them out there, and they've got some.
I'll put it up on the banners as we go as the show goes on. Hey,
Mark
Cicero.
Yep, happy Friday to you. I'm gonna get that out to you. That link. I'm still tweaking a few things on it, but it's working really good. It's something I put together to help build videos, AI videos and stuff. But
hi, Lori.
Good to see you, Lori. Happy Friday to you as well. Feliz Viernes. Yeah, certainly. So, but let's talk to Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass and get some community announcements and stuff going here.
SCN Television presents K Pasa. And now here's this evening's host, Army Sergeant Bob Foster.
Good evening and welcome to K Pasa. We've got two guests tonight. First Sergeant First Class Jim Webb. Sergeant Webb's with the 227th Military Police Team.
There you go, man. So anyhow, the this week announcements are kind of short. We're just reminders. The Pan Canal Society reunion is around the corner, guys. July, second week in July this time. It's the 8th of July as opposed to the 4th of July weekend. But we are in the second week in May, which means you only have a couple of weeks to make sure you register with both the society as a member and then register for the reunion because the 29th is the cutoff.
And
So,
get your tickets because prices are going up, I think, next weekend.
yeah.
So try to get your tickets if you can.
Yeah, if
This
they're anything
week.
like World Cup tickets, man, as soon as those things went on sale, if you weren't in that first drawing, man, you got screwed. Although it's interesting.
Oh, your airline tickets, Willie. Those prices are going to go up.
Yeah, no, we fortunately got a good deal on our airline tickets to fly
Yeah.
to Toronto. But tickets were, we got ours, face value because I was fortunately got picked in the lottery. But I mean, they went up like 3 and 4 times, for games that are just really small games. But interesting thing in Canada, they just passed a law that said you cannot sell them for more than the original price.
Face value. Good.
Yeah, so now all of a sudden people that had maybe bought them and hoarded them and then turn around and sell them a week or two before for $1,000 are, sorry, bro, you're holding on to even Steven money there. You might as well just get your money back now because it ain't going to grow any. So might get a lot of people a chance to get to that. So definitely check them out if you're looking at going to the World
So,
Cup.
Willie, when is the University of Florida's luncheon for the museum? I'm at the museum.
That was
but
in March.
Oh, that's not right before the reunion.
I don't. They used to have one right before the reunion, but I haven't seen anything announced other than whatever they've got going on with the society at the reunion itself.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that for our next show. 'Cause I know we're getting close, and those guys really, really do a good job with with the
absolutely.
reunion and what they do. So I'm going to follow up on that so that we're a little more prepared next time.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'll comb through a couple of these things real quick here because I did pull up their information. Of course, pancanalsociety.org is their website. Make sure you go there as well. Golf tournament, you make sure you get enrolled in that one. It's on Thursday morning. Get signed up for that one. That one's always a lot of fun. They've got, of course, the clubhouse vendors. Trying to think, I don't see anything for the. Well, they have the UF and PC Friends of the Museum silent auction. Okay, that is it's during the vendor hour, so they'll have more information there, of course. And you definitely want to check out that museum. It's a great stop anyway because there's a lot of nostalgic items there that you look at. It's just
And what they do for the Canal Zone history is incredible.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, it's going to be a great reunion. These guys have put together a lot of stuff here. The one big change that Ricky likes to talk about a lot is Saturday night, and that's what he mentioned. Getting those tickets is for that Saturday night Tivoli soiree, right? Because that's a really, really, really big deal. They're going back to the old style, which was dress
like
up
the
nice
Tivoli
and
nights.
warmer. Yeah, which makes sense, and which is a
like
great
Tivoli
name for
nights.
Tivoli soiree. Which, in fact, that'll be great to maybe when you do that episode, since it's a few weeks before the reunion, it might be great to have somebody from the society on to talk about that soiree and the Tivoli, since they're going to be front and center there talking about it. So
Perhaps get Kelly on. I like to get Kelly Moe on.
Yeah, for sure. But make sure you get tickets for that because that does include dinner. I know.
Well,
like
you can do. It's like two events. Sorry, Willie. There's like two events. You can do the dinner and the dance separate, but you're going to get a much better experience if you do both together.
Sure, you can do the whole package or just one of them.
Yeah, because if you get the dinner, remember you're also going to get pollera dancers, and you're going to get a little murga. So it's going to be a little bit more fun. A little happy hour with everybody. Just think of it as prom night. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Saturday night is prom night. You dress up and you want a prom.
That's exactly it, dude. Think of it as prom night. That's absolutely right. So a couple things to keep in mind. The pricing on these. The reunion registration fee is $15 for a member and the member's spouse. Okay, non-member guests are $25. The Chagres Golf Tournament is $80. The Grand Tivoli Soiree, 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. So that's a long time, guys.
That's the whole package,
including the ball and the ticket. Is $90. If you want to just do the
ballroom,
is this children 12 and under only? It's $45. If you want to do just the annual ball itself, it's $20 from 9 p.m. So you don't get the dinner out of that. And again, make sure you get this taken care of before May 29th if possible. Doesn't mean you can't do it after that, but You know, I mean, you can actually
because
show
it
up
is a
day of
big
the reunion.
ballroom. So yeah, I'm
Well,
sure
it is,
there'll be
and you know, when you show up at the reunion, there's opportunities, but some of these do have, you know, capacity control. So you may be able to show up at the reunion and register as a member and take part in society functions and everything else. But that doesn't mean that there's tickets still available for the ball, because they do have limited space, you know, especially for the dinner part, because they're obviously ordering that food ahead of time. So sooner the better, obviously.
Yeah, sooner better. Try to make everybody really try. I know it's expensive, but God, it's going to be so much
I think
fun.
so, yeah.
So classical, so Canal Zone. Because look, from the Tivoli days and the days that we're going to be talking about tonight, they've been having these types of balls where the Canal Zone shows up in record numbers.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Yeah, no. So it's and listen, man, it's
Thank you.
like Ricky said, it's gonna be, you know, a lot more. Almost think of it like a prom, especially the graduating classes, class of '81, class of '86. You know, do a redo of your prom.
76,
You know, yeah, exactly.
Class
All the
76, those guys show up in force too. That's a big class.
Yeah, so you know that would be a cool way of doing it, is get together and book a section, you know, at that thing, have dinner together, like you did
Our
for
class is doing that.
the
Yeah,
prom. Yeah, so
booking a section.
make
so
it a
we can all
fun
hang
time,
out.
guys. Make it a really cool event. It's the first one of it, you know, and make it a hit. Make it a home
classy.
run for these guys, man. Yeah,
Had
for
to
sure.
be classy. I mean, I'm not time to be classy, but it'll be a great time to be classy.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. So, but anyway, Ricky, what's going on in Panama?
Oh,
What's
let's
going
get
on
into
your
some
end?
bochincha, guys.
Yeah,
Because last week we gave you a break on the bochincha because, you know, we didn't want to just pound you on these ports. But as we have let things develop, let me tell you, it has been one heck of a fight that Panama and our president has done a good job of handling, by the way, like they did with the Trump administration at the beginning. Very peaceful, very neutral, and, you know, non-escalating. So a little recap. You know, there was the ports, right? There was a little corruption, a little influence, a little no pay, which cost a lawsuit, right? And the Panamanian Supreme Court said this is unconstitutional. You know, you guys owe like a ton of money. And then started escalating from there. The Chinese got quite upset about that. And they, you know, their escalation was suing Panama for $2 billion. Then they threatened MSC and Merck to get out of the ports. Then they started flagging all the Panamanian. I mean, they started detaining all the Panamanian flagged ships at ports, where normally they would detain for inspection 3, 4, 10 a month of the whole entire Panamanian flag, you know, ships, maybe 10 to 12 a month to inspect. Now they got up to like 110, 112 a month. So it was an obvious escalation and caused a lot of problems. Now, when they did that, Panama decided, well, listen, we do have to let China know that, you know, we have to de-escalate. So 11 aligned nations, what I mean by aligned is Panama has a neutrality treaty with about 40 countries. That's it. Well, out of those 40, 11, including the United States, you know, stood up and said, hey, look, you know, you got to keep politics out of world commerce. And so China has kind of taken now that message, and they have de-escalated now. And they say, okay, we'll go fight this in court. And of course, this has brought on a lot of changes for, like, let's say Panama. What they're gonna do now is they're gonna upgrade how they inspect their own ships, so that there is no excuse for anybody to use that against us.
Right.
So that's one thing that has been good about this. And the second thing is Panama has shown that no matter how bad it gets, and no matter how big the opponent is, the canal is 100% neutral. Everybody's going to still go through. There's not going to be any restrictions or any politics or anything. So cheers to Panama for doing that and showing that to the world, that no matter how hard things are, yeah, we're still going to operate that canal.
In that canal that has been the case, you know, since we can remember, is this neutrality treaty and this neutrality clause, and that's something that in some instances it's been an irritant to the United States. In other cases, it's been an irritant to China or other people. But the fact remains that Panama, the canal is considered such a vital waterway to the world that in spite of it being all 100% within one country, a sovereign country, and obviously having the backing of another big superpower, it still has that neutrality component of it that says, hey, I don't care what flag you have, you're allowed to go through that canal.
Yeah,
you know?
and it is tempting for. I mean, I myself have said, well, we should inspect their ships or charge them more, but then we're bringing politics into the canal operation,
setting a precedent, a bad one.
Kudos to the Canal Zone, to ACP, sorry, for and the Panamanian government for maintaining that neutrality, maintaining the canal out of that.
Yeah.
So China obviously showed that they did bring politics into world commerce, and Panama didn't. So at the end of the day, the good guys always win. So they're gonna go fight it out now in court. I think that Panama was what Panama did was they had this is on me now, guys. They had a trump card up their sleeves, which is when the ports were labeled unconstitutional, right?
Right.
China's zero cooperation. They were not helping in the transfer of of ownership.
Correct.
They were like, F you guys, so Panama raided their offices.
Right.
With their police and their DEA or FBI or whatever. They went in there, raided, and of course they have kept tight lip about what they found. But some of the things that have gone out there are they found intel offices, military intelligence offices. Yep. They found a tremendous drug trade out of those ports. Being shipped out of those ports to Europe and Asia. So. But again, the government hasn't said this. This is what's out there. But the government keeping their mouth shut is why China's not saying shit.
Well, that's what it is, because Panama's not showing their hand.
They're not showing their hand. That's what I'm saying. Well, it's been such an amazing strategy by the Panamanian government, being as tiny as we are, 4 million people. Jesus Christ.
Well, but I think at this point you got to remember these guys that are in office there now. They're part of a Panama that has been in the international stage now for 100 years. Yeah. But at the present rate, front and center for a good 30 or 40 years is where they're used to this, and they're saying, hey, I don't care who you are, man. This is our canal. We're not gonna play your game. That's all there is to it, And like you said, he did it last year with when Trump started saying we should take back the canal, and he
stayed neutral. Right. He didn't confront Trump, and
it really is. It really is. It's showing that you have confidence in what you're doing and it's the right thing, right?
Yeah, he's a good president. I mean, I know he's taking a hit right now. Everybody's taking a hit in Panama. I don't know what it is with this month. If it's every month of the year, all the bad news comes out, but there's a ton of bad news coming out of Panama. Now, we're not here to tell you guys about the bad news. We're here to tell you all about the Canal Zone. Good news, ACP. Always good news, ACP. They're doing such a great job. And these are the guys that took over the Canal Zone government.
Right.
They just recently this week, Willie, we all know that they have a board of directors, right? And it's mostly Panamanians. As a matter of fact, it's all Panamanians.
Yeah, it's all Panamanians now.
And before that, it was when it was Canal Zone government, there was also a board of directors. But Willie, since 1999, that has to do with the treaties. Yeah. They also have a board of advisors, which is equal as powerful, if not more. And everybody in Panama is now finding out about this. And who are the board of advisors? These guys are like the top shipping magnates and the top port operators and the top logistics people, the real experts.
Sure.
Nobody in Panama has those kind of resumes. Nobody, period. Sorry. Right. So they understood this. For them to be number one in the world and operating the canal, right, they had to have such a board of advisors. Well, they all got together this week, and the 40th time they've been together since 1999. And what they do, Willie, is they talk about operations. They talk about, financial performance. Okay. And believe it or not, because we were talking about this on our chat group, transparency. They're going to start showing exactly where all this money that the canal generates, where it's going. So you're going to have access to that. And they also do a 10-year strategy, which is proper. And right. And then, the secure energy, and they also, how they're going to secure energy and water resources to make sure the canal operates for the next 10 years. And of course, which caught my attention, Willie, one of the most important parts of this meeting was, how is Panama going to supply the labor force for all this, development? And of course, similar to what the Canal's own government had in the apprenticeship program, Panama also has that. Right. And so they talked about that and how that is up to date, and they're doing a real good job, like the Canal's own government did, with preparing the labor force. Every 10 years, they're expecting to rotate them. So that was an amazing thing about, the Board of Advisors being completely interested in how Panama is providing its labor force.
Right.
Now, another thing they also touched on is because, energy is a big thing, where they're getting their energy from, and water. And this is why this big project is being going to be starting here pretty soon, called El Rio Indio. And Willie has a map here to show you guys. See on the purple, guys, that's a big water. There's 2 ginormous rivers there.
There's 3
three actually. And, they run, because it's right at the center, right? So some of the water runs to the Atlantic or the Caribbean side.
So I guess this is what is technically considered a watershed. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
That area where you have a lot of access to water and you can...
A lot of access. And then some of it goes to the Pacific. So what they're going to capture, if you see there, I don't know if you guys can see it, where it says Rio Indio. They're capturing water coming down 2 major rivers, Cocle and Indio. And they're going to dam it right there where it says Rio Indio on the map in the yellowish area.
Yeah.
And then from there, Willie, they're going to build a underground tunnel. You're talking... I really don't know the size. What I saw was 8 meters to 9 meters. So that's times 3. That's like 30 feet. 30. These things are ginormous. You could put a car through there.
Right.
And 2 cars through there easily with some pedestrian area. Well, they're going to have this tunnel.
What that size is when Jim Duffus joins us to talk about the Gatun locks, because those lock chambers.
Yeah, it's got to be similar to what's underneath the locks.
Right.
Yeah,
so there's that
right.
experience that Panama has in that underground water movement in large amounts,
Correct. And we're going to talk about the tunnels and stuff here in a minute. So Rio Indio, guys, this project that the ACP is going to start getting involved with, $1.4 billion, which has already started. They're already relocating people, and of course, there's the campesino groups getting together to oppose it. So they're going through that part right now. They seem to be on top of it. And it's a dam and a tunnel project, Willie. Yeah. So a big dam to hold up those two rivers coming in, and then let the water out into the Atlantic, and then shoot the rest like a big spigot down that 30-foot round tube to feed the watershed, the Gatun Lake.
And you guys remember 2 years ago, right about this time of the year, was a lot of news that dry season had ended and the water levels it was a bad dry season, a drought, and the water levels were very low. And of course, all the big news outlets around the world, like, it was just the end of the Panama Canal. And
oh my God, the YouTube videos were unbelievable.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah. It was ridiculous.
What it did do, though, is it did give this more attention and more urgency, and probably, really got the ball rolling in a more serious way, that now they actually have formalized plans to get the ball rolling on this and move it.
Well, truly, Willie, the governments before have just kept kicking the can down the street. That's all they get.
100%.
Kick the can. Remember that game we played as a kid?
We assume that the water in for example, in Gatun Lake and everything, its primary purpose is the bridge to move from the Atlantic to Pacific and vice versa. Yes. But it's also to supply water to
2 million people in the city now.
Exactly. You look
when we were growing up, there was like 700,000 people. So there was a lot of water then.
The water usage is a lot more now, and you need it.
Yeah. Now, Willie, when this junta of advisors and the junta de directores, board of directors, and of course the administrator and the deputy administrator all got together, one of the things they talked about, believe it or not, we got to give kudos to the Chinese, is the unbelievable work they have been doing with the Germans to build that tunnel. I mean, people are going to start studying it as a one of the better
An
tunnels
example of how to do
ever
it.
built.
Yes.
And I'm
interesting.
gonna
Good
cheer to
point.
that because you know me, I'm not a big give them big kudos, but wow, I was impressed with that. They're
It's nice that it gives Panama that recognition of being this is one of the ways it's recognized to do this. An example for other places to do that type of construction.
So they're going to be studying that tunnel on how to do that for other projects in the future and throughout the world, and of course they also talked about the new administrator. Now this is big news because this is where Panama can shine or blow it. What I mean by blowing it is by bringing in politics into the ACP. But it's such an important position. I mean, it's second to the president, bar none, right? Selecting this admin. There is one candidate that is the shining star. Her last name is Espino. She's from the Torrijos family, and she is the deputy administrator now.
Right.
Morota Espino. Morota is her husband's name. And she was in charge of the third set of locks.
Yes.
She was in charge
Very
of Rio Indio. I mean, this lady, very good friends with a lot of our friends with the Canal Zone community because they all went to Texas A&M together.
Right.
And not only that, Willie, this is the thing about this young lady.
But she's
Young lady, she's my age, exactly my age. Thing about her is that she's been working in the Canal Zone. I mean, in the canal, between 35 and 40 years.
Right.
I mean,
anybody that understands the inner workings of the canal operation, it's
she
her.
started at the bottom,
Right.
I think as like a machinist or something like that, and worked her way up to deputy administrator. So there's truly nobody more qualified than
100%.
her.
Yeah.
Period. There isn't. But who are we? Of course, we don't really know. But that's the whole thing. Now, everybody's paying attention because, of course, Panama might want to bring in one of their own person, maybe an accountant, maybe a lawyer, something. So anyways, the last guy, Vasquez, the guy that's there now, I think he is an accountant. I'm not sure if he's an engineer.
Okay.
But he has done a very, very good job. And he did come from Panama, and he is an incredible administrator. So kudos to him. But the new one, we're just hoping is this lady Morota Espino. But if it's not, I'm sure they're going to select the right one. But crossing our fingers that they don't blow it because of the importance of that position. And that's kind of what we have there on ACP. But, one last thing, ACP. Two things. Water level, Willie, both the dam and the lake are where there need to be. And we just finished the dry season. So, in other words, they're going to be dumping a lot of water.
Right.
So, all you spillway people that love to watch the spillway, you're going to be seeing that.
Yeah.
Because the rainy season's upon us.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already had massive
more
flooding.
than once this year then.
Yeah, they've had massive flooding then right now because of the amount of rain.
I saw that.
And the second thing is transits, Willie, 41 a day with no hiccups, no problem. They say they can't keep that up, but because there's a need right now, they're doing it, but they have no intentions of keeping it at 41. And of course, we already told you last week or the week before, the cost, if you want to skip the line and get your boat through,
and the express lane, the express pass.
If you want to get to the express lane, the last guy, $4 million on top of his fees to jump the line.
Privilege to jump the line. That doesn't touch your actual fares and
costs
fees
and whatever.
Yeah, correct. That was just to buy that pass to get to the front of the line.
Yeah. So yes, with transparency coming, bigger revenue, and of course, ACP is building the two new. God, there's so much news coming out of the Canal Zone. It's amazing and beautiful. The ACP, Canal Zone government, aka ACP, they're also really going to be building 2 ports, adding 7 million more TEUs to a ginormous amount of TEUs going through Panama, which really puts any wishful competition, out of the picture. Mexico, Nicaragua, whoever wants to compete.
There was that article that came out the other day, and it showed that successful transportation of all these Hyundai vehicles across Mexico. And, when you look at that number, it looks like a big number, but
it's like 1.4 million. Panama's at 10, and they're going to add another 7.
It didn't even hit the million. It was like 790,000.
Yeah. I thought it was like, you're right. It wasn't even a million.
Like, wow, no. I mean, you know what? It's like, to me, it's like
1 month in Panama.
Well, it's like Panama Pacifico Airport, right? You got your 2 or 3 little jets that fly in there, and then you got Tucumán. You got 100 gates there, and you got all kinds of planes coming there. Tucumán's not worried about Panama Pacifico. That's not going to hurt them. The Panama Canal is not worried about Mexico's little rail line there. Have fun. You're taking some of the pressure off of us, but truly, we have a backlog that.
Right. Cars is one thing. We have gas and petrol that get through. But even that, Willie, they're building the gas duct for that. So
correct. So even there, we're going to compete with we're going to add another service ourselves to compete against these guys. Yeah, it was funny to see, but you know what? It just shows the importance of getting something from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, and why that's something that people have chased since the 1500s. Because whether it's in Panama, in Nicaragua, in Mexico, wherever the case is, that is the place where most people want to move goods back and forth.
Since the 1500s, Papito. Since the 1500s. All right, guys. So that's what we got on ACP. Now, Willie, this is a long version, Bochincha, guys, because there's good stuff.
Feeling here.
The Jungle School of Panama in the news again, because of course, they're training U.S. forces, but not only U.S. forces, it's really a multinational school. They're training everybody there because, we're taking on the drug cartel. So, of course, I thought, okay, the Jungle School's in the news. Let's talk about the Jungle School, guys. So the Jungle School, but the reason I want to talk to you about the Jungle School is because I want to connect a Zonian to this. And that Zonian, his name is, I shouldn't call him a Zonian, but he is a Zonian. His name, he was a chief of the Embera group called Chief Sarco. This gentleman is can't wait to get into this story. All right. Sarco is the guy who that he trained the astronauts, right? So he was recruited in the 60s, right, by the U.S. Air Force, because he already had a reputation of, knowing how to navigate the jungle, how to pick plants that are edible, right. And he had a talent in building piraguas, which was those canoes.
Yes.
So the Air Force out of Albrook at the time hired him. Hey, come over here and teach our soldiers and how to do this. So he came over, and of course we all know he trained the Mercury 7 crew and the Apollo 11 crew on survival skills in case they're when they landed in the jungle or something. These guys knew how to survive, right? How to navigate through there, how to find edible plants to eat, survival skills. Yeah. So he was hired by the U.S. government, right? And who gets trained at this school, Willie? Who gets trained right now? Special forces are getting trained, from all different nations. Pilots, and on the civilian side, because this is not normal. This is truly not a military school. This is a school that you pay to get trained.
Sure.
Survival specialists. So there's a lot of people that do these like videos, for example,
like rescue teams and stuff as well.
Rescue team, anybody that has to do with survival, go there for training. So it's not a U.S. military training school,
but even in that aspect of it, it kind of takes us back to what we learned recently about the different military operations and defense of the canal, and how back in the 40s and 50s they had that simulated parachute attack. Right, involved Brazil, Peru, the United States, and I believe Colombia, right? And they simulated, being invaded, by paratroopers and having to defend the canal and Rio Hato and everything. And it's kind of going back to that again. It says, hey, Panama's recognizing we got to work together as a region here, right? And so we're starting to bring these groups together, and you have a state-of-the-art facility that's been around for 50 plus years.
Right, and this guy, Chief Sarco, is the one that put it all together. Now, guys, this school, what it does, it combines military science with indigenous knowledge. And this is why it's such a unique school in the world, right? So, all right, let's talk about the chief. So, Sarco was a smart man. Let me tell you. Right. Chief Sarco was a smart man. So, he says, look, I'll train you guys, but you guys need to provide us with some land.
Sure.
So they came up with an agreement. This is why they were around Gamboa, around the canal, on the banks of the canal. The only ones allowed right? Because they, exchange. And they created 2 villages. Pararapuru. I could have been, got the pronunciation wrong, but that's how you spell it in. I'm saying it. Pararapuru, and the second one, San Antonio. Real easy.
Yeah.
And so what he negotiated was, and if you remember, on all the military bases, there was always kunas everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the bowling alley, at the cafeterias, everywhere there was kunas. Well, they all came from him. He provided the labor force for all our military bases because of the trust between them. And so he was known as Mr. Palanca. You went to him for whatever you needed.
That was him,
and if you look in the dictionary, Carlsberg dictionary, his name, Sarko's in there, and they call him Mr. Palanca. So this guy won awards in the United States, awards in Panama. He's recognized by NASA. This guy is a Zonian legacy. He's actually in Bera, but I'm kind of like, I always.
Well, but hey, listen, as we know, there are few and far between that are actually from the zone from the get-go.
No, but these guys they lived in the zone.
Yeah.
So they provided all the labor for Gamboa, plus the Canal Zone let them farm. So they also provided the Canal Zone with a lot of organic food.
Yeah.
All right. So there was this there was this just beautiful collaboration,
very symbiotic relationship
between the U.S. government, the U.S. military, the Canal Zone government, the U.S. military, and this Embera group. And so his chief Sarko. Now, Willie, so anyways, at the end of the canal, 1999, when it went over, Panama has laws that doesn't allow farming in the canal area. So this was huge because they'd only lost, all the bases. They couldn't farm. So, what were they going to do with this man who has provided so much for the Canal Zone and the world? So the U.S. government and the Panamanian government together, helped this community build one of the biggest ecotourism industries right now in Panama, right?
Yeah.
It's all about cultural preservation.
Sure.
That's what they did. So if you go to Panama, you go on these canoe rides and you go into all these villages, I've done it. It's beautiful. Right. That's all from this guy, his legacy.
Nice. And like Lauren's putting in the chat there, a true wellness retreat that they have there.
Oh, man, it's an amazing story. He also worked in the Canal Zone, 20 years in hydraulics division, and then till today, his piragua designs are being used in the Canal Zone. To navigate, to get all the water information they need. So he is a legacy in the Canal Zone and Panama and the world. Yeah, he's a great guy, man. He's up there with Bayano.
So he's still around, huh?
He's up there with Gothos, Gorgas.
Is he still around, or is he deceased now?
That's a good question, because this was in the 60s and he was already, like a senior chief. So
I imagine
hard to say.
Elderly.
Yeah, but when I heard the Jungle School, I thought, how could I bring this into the show tonight? And I thought,
of course.
Instead of talking about the Jungle School again, which we all know, let's talk about something that came from. And this guy was an incredible story, Sarko. Jesus Christ, what a great guy, man! I'm surprised there's not a town named after him.
Yeah, no kidding.
And there should. He is incredible. All right, guys, let's get into the social part and then wrap this up. All right,
real
social.
Quick, before you jump into that, though, Bill Duffus was asking a question. Any updates on the Bridge of the Americas?
Oh, yes. We always have updates on that. Well, if you guys know, we get firsthand reporting that truly nobody else does. Captain Andrew, our Zonian captain from dear to our hearts, he reports from the bridge of ships going through the canal, under the bridge, and he films what's going on with the construction. And one thing I guys can tell you guys, it's moving along. The piers are up, but one thing that makes me proud is how Sosa Hill is not giving in. It's making it the hardest job they've ever had to excavate a hill, man.
I think what Bill's asking, though, is on the Bridge of the Americas with the fire and the explosion.
Oh, with the fires? Well, yes, we do have an update on that. It's all positive.
Yeah.
The fire did not cause structural damage of any kind. Yeah. What it did was it burnt off some paint, and that's truly it. There was no structural issues at all. But what's happening now is they're monitoring the ship. They've invested in all these monitoring devices, and they closed the ship down. I mean, the bridge down to set these monitoring devices correctly, and they will be monitoring that structure for the next 3 years or so. And the reason why is because they know they have to replace the road work. But the road work, the concrete slab that goes across the bridge, has nothing to do with the explosion. That's something that needed to be repaired. Sure. They brought the material. They stole the material.
When you see anybody shooting video when they're crossing the bridge, it looks like patchwork. I mean, it really
you can see down into the. You see holes. I think they patched that, but we've seen videos where you can see the hole, you can see the water underneath. Right. So it's
and it's interesting because obviously the fire, and it was a big deal, right? And it happened. Coincidentally happened right when this war had kicked off, so people are thinking, "Oh no, look at some kind of an attack on the canal and whatever." But
that's right. At the same time,
right? All of a sudden, the conspiracy theorists were out there. The tin hats came on big time. But you know what it did do is it put eyes on the bridge. Put
eyes on their bridge,
and now there's more attention being brought to it, and so therefore it's going to get the fix up that it needs, because there was a big scandal. We talked about this about a year ago, that there was a lot of steel
to repair that roadway, and they stole it.
It was all put out there by Coker or Kobe or somewhere out there. They had it all stored, Veracruz or somewhere, and it got stolen. And you're talking, tons and tons of that was purpose built or manufactured and brought to replace for that bridge. And so there was a lot of talk of saying, well, what happens if this thing becomes structurally unsound? Panama's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because, a new bridge, as you can see from the one that's coming up there, it's not something that goes up quickly, right? And so you can't replace that bridge if it suddenly is out of commission, very fast. And truth be told, even if they had the materials to do it, it's still going to take some time, but they don't have those materials anymore. So,
it's coming. The next,
that's what I mean.
They won't start for 3 years, though.
Great benefit in the long run. People look back and go, that fire maybe hid, for lack of a better term,
that fire did a lot of good.
Ass. Yeah,
in my opinion, what it has done good is, Willie, before the fire, there was a lot of talk of tearing it down.
Right,
of course, because it has that U.S., how they want to get rid of all the U.S. Images. Sure. And there was talk of tearing it down. Now, forget that. There ain't, they're not tearing that down unless they start building ships that can't get underneath it.
Well, even when it had the fire, and when the talk started to come out that, oh no, what was the damage? How bad is it? You even, and not just in Zonian circles, but even in Panama circles, there was a lot of people that started to show a lot of sentiment for that bridge and saying that this is part of the picture of Panama, is the bridge of the Americas. And so all of a sudden the fire kind of gave it some extra nostalgia that has
well, and not only that, they need it in case of an emergency. They need their bridge. 100%. You never know.
The whole West Bank is the suburbs of Panama City, pretty much, man. And so they need every bridge they have.
And actually they're already talking about another bridge, so they're going to build a fifth bridge, right? Because the Arraijan at right hand is growing. That place is over 1 million people, between Arahan and Chorrera and Capira and those places. So that's what's going on the bridge. I hope that's a great update. We should have put that on the list, but that's kind of past us now. Everybody's moved on from that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, okay, let's go on to a social scene. Like always, we love to report on restaurants. Why? Because, food is good. Panama's known for its food. So they had this poll in Panama, Willie. What are the best late night eateries? If you remember when we were growing up, right? We, at least my age group, we would go out till pretty late at night. And then we would go down by Callejota. And there was this one little spot that had, it was way down there in Callejota. They had these Cuban sandwiches and the best little coffee, little espressos or whatever the Panamanian coffee is. And we would always end up there to get those little sandwiches in and then go home and sleep, right? So we all know that what I'm talking about when I say late night eateries. So they had this poll. What were they? Well, the guy that won is called Costa Azul. Now, this is huge because I've never heard of him, but if you're down there, go check this place out. It is the clubhouse of the clubhouses. It's in the Barrio area on Ricardo Arias Street. Now, if you guys in Panama that have been to Panama, you know this one restaurant called Beirut. Excellent restaurant. Or Global Cigars, because it's right in that little neighborhood there You know where Santuario is, Willie? You know that area, the Renaissance Hotel. Well, that area. Oh, there was a famous bar too that a lot of Zonians used to go to. Your age group actually was in that area as well, and I don't remember the name, but anyway, it's Costa Azul. You know, they're known for their club sandwiches. This is what I like about Panama. They still do Monte Cristo, the Monte Cristo sandwich. They're known for that, and they're also known for their cordon bleu sandwiches. Another place that's still popular is that they make that, but they're really, really known for is bistec al caballo.
Yes,
which translates to steak and eggs with tortillas. And that is supposed to be spectacular. Like, you don't want to miss it. And then second place was Nico's in Balboa, which used to be the old bowling alley. Mm-hmm. Which they really, I don't know if you've been there, Willie, but I've been there, and they really did a good job to try to make it look like the clubhouse. And in my opinion, it does. Maybe they weren't trying to make it look like that, but to me, it looked like that. Every time I go there, I feel like I'm at the clubhouse because it has the same, you grab your tray and then you go to the different sections and get your food. And it has a tremendous amount of pictures of the former Canal Zone.
Okay, right.
So, other restaurants that we promote on this show, always Austin Mama's for your steaks, your barbecue, ran by Americans, won awards. The embassy has given awards. It's really a great place to go. Everybody who's ever gone there and spoken with us has given it thumbs up. Austin Mama's in Cardenas. And of course, the one that we all like. Hey, we got a beer. Right on, man. Thank you very much.
I know I didn't pop up there, but whoever it was, thank you for the beer.
Thank you. But we got the sound effects now, so we don't miss it. Yeah. But the one that I always promote, because everybody that I've spoken has gone there has said is spectacular. It's called La Tapa del Coco, which is an Afro-Panamanian cuisine. This is what's putting Panama on the map. Okay. The Afro-Panamanian cuisine. Because we've all heard of ropa vieja and arroz con pollo, but that's not what is putting Panama on the scene. That's not the food that's putting them where they are right now. It's this Afro-Panamanian cuisine that is the fusion of the Caribbean and Panama.
Very much an Atlantic side origins.
Oh, definitely a Colon Atlantic side, Asca side invention. But it's called La Tapa del Coco. Check it out, guys. And you know what else they won, Willie? Best hamburger in Panama.
Nice.
They have the big festival, and they
like
won
that,
best
man.
hamburger.
I'm a hamburger connoisseur, man. I love a good burger, man. And I'll tell you what, I'm picky about burgers because here's what I find. Most places that tell you they serve a good burger, the burger itself is very, very flavorless. They just load up a bunch of toppings. You'll put guac and this and some sauce and whatever, and all your flavors in the toppings. But the burger itself doesn't have any seasoning. It's the most basic thing when it comes to cooking. And so, man, I love going somewhere and I'll get a good burger and I'll compliment it because unfortunately the norm seems to be the other way around where you don't flavor the burger, you just throw all those.
I know those smash burgers. You don't flavor anything.
Yeah.
La Tapa del Coco, guys, highly recommended by this show. Yeah. All right. Last but not least is expat news. Panama, like I always tell you guys this, but I know the reason why I keep mentioning is because a lot of guys my age are getting ready to retire. And we are all Cardenas. I always say Corzo. Sorry about that, guys. It is Cardenas. Even the port that the ACP is building is Cardenas, not Corzo. Or did I get that one backwards as well?
The other way around. Ay,
Dios mío. All right, I'll stick to architecture and Bochinche.
That's where the Panama Railroad now for passenger traffic starts.
Yeah, correct. That's the last stop.
Doesn't go all the way through to Balboa and Ancon.
Yep. Now, guys, on the expat front, again, it's because a lot of us are retiring and thinking, where are we going to go? Where are we going to move? I know I am. But Boquete seems to be the spot. We're going to talk about it one last time, and then we'll move on to other places. Boquete, guys, the weather, the coffee, all their organic food, and of course their pristine waters was bringing everybody there. But what is Boquete really known for, guys? Is known for their festivals. They have a lot of music festivals and flower festivals and coffee festivals.
Great climate. It's a
great climate. And believe it or not, Airbnb is also classifying as one of its top places for, like best or most organic designers. Yeah. Boquete is known for that. And not only that, the government is spending big big money on their infrastructure. They're trying to build this like coffee highway. You know, that you like in Napa Valley or Sonoma, there's a highway that hits all the wineries, right? They're kind of doing that in Boquete. Cool. So one of the next towns we're going to talk about, guys, is Volcan, which is also on the list of the top places of expats moving to. A lot of us remember Volcan, but back in the 70s, we're going to look at it, Volcan today. So on our next expat update, we're going to talk about Volcan and what's going on in there. Boquete, again, lots and lots and lots of expats, American and European. And once again, we have come to the end of the long Bochincha segment.
Well, it was definitely a long
one.
one.
From the YMCA. Wait, one more announcement.
Yeah.
Architectural announcement, too. As we all grew up with the YMCA, one of the top buildings in the Canal Zone when it comes to architecture and the decor, and just beautiful all the way around. Even had a pool in the back and a gym. Because remember us in St. Mary's? That was our gym.
That was our gym.
Well, it closed down. El Rey bought it. They were going to turn it into a supermarket, never developed. And it's just been rotting away until our Canal Zone community has come together. And our very lovely Captain Andrew F. Tamides is embarking on a museum project. That he wants to do a miniature museum of the canal construction days and military days. You know,
construction and defense.
Construction and defense is going to be the museum. So he is now negotiating to get the YMCA building to convert that into. Right now, there's a lot of, because he's asking. El Rey to collaborate with them, but to turn that into, hopefully, I would like to see it turn into a museum, hotel, restaurant. That would be a phenomenal place for the Canal Zone community to not establish themselves, but to go visit when they're in town. So good luck, Andrew. We're hoping that the negotiations go well and that you get that spot. And don't forget to ask for the plans, because I'm going to need those floor plans.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's kind of interesting, and I'll just throw it on the screen real quick. This is an early rendition of one of the logos on it here, but it's the Cut and Shield Museum, again, tentative here, and Andrew, hope I'm not putting out there before I should, but it is something being worked on with the Grupo Rey, which I started looking into these guys. They're quite an accomplished conglomerate of companies in Panama, and it's pretty exciting that Andrew's, making inroads with these guys and see if they can't collaborate on something like that, because it's the Andrew he's allowed us to get to see some of what he's working on already, and it's
11 miles.
Damn good, man.
Yeah, 11 miles. I think it's from Culebra to Paraíso. I think that's where it is. Those 11 miles.
It's where
scale.
Where see a real canal construction was taking place and excavating, but
with all the trains going by,
looks fantastic,
and the lighting and the trees.
It's quite an endeavor, And Andrew's put a lot of effort in. This is a big passion of his, and so we're excited to see it. Big
studio. He's got about 4 or 5 people working for him.
It's fun to sit there and watch something, being built from scratch and kind of being a part of it and giving him some feedback on it and stuff. So it's pretty cool, man. Yeah.
Right.
Congrats, Andrew. Well done, buddy.
Well done. And we will be hitting you up for donations.
Yeah. Of course.
But it is going to be a Canal Zone museum, so it'd be worth one of those donations that we love to ask for to keep our society going.
Well, good. Well, listen, a lot of good information there, a lot of good Panama information, but the show must go on here. We are going to talk some canal construction here. But beforehand, we do need to pay some bills here, so let's get our Howler Monkey going up there, and then a new one will be launching next week for sure.
I've seen it. Pretty good.
Production. There's some cool stuff that I will tell you this. There's a little bit of a chef competition there. That's all I'm going to say there, but it's pretty cool. But anyhow,
I'll blow it and give it up. You know me.
Yeah, of course you will. Yeah, Ricky can keep a secret about it as good as he's like George Costanza. You put it in the vault there and forget about it, man. That's not secure at all. But anyhow, here we go.
We're still looking for our Howler Monkey hot sauce spokesperson. Just got an email from Panama.
You've got mail.
Hey, I'm Mac, and I grew up behind Howard Air Force Base in Panama. I can talk about hot sauce. on pizza. Uy, qué rico. So I just miro la camera and say, I'm Mac. I grew up in these trees next to Howard Air Force Base. Hey, are we really going to Napoli? And let me tell you, the flavors of ají chombo, garlic, and onions, they each hit you one at a time, and it's so delicious. Howler Monkey Original brings the true taste ají chombo of Panama to your pizza game.
Do you know a howler monkey who can describe the sweet heat of our original with authentic ají chombo peppers, or the fresh punch of verde where habanero warmth meets crisp bell pepper? How about the bold tang of Amarillo, yellow Scotch bonnets blended with mustard seeds? And of course, our hot, the same great flavor as original, fired up with red habaneros for that fire. Our sauces are all natural, no preservatives, gluten-free, pure flavor and pure fire. Are you the next Howler Monkey spokesperson?
All right, there we go. Mac from Howard Air Force Base, and of course, we've met Gamboa, who's
I liked him. He was cool.
Yeah, he was cool. He's got a more West Indian vibe, or a Bijan vibe, as they call it.
Yeah, this guy's more Calle Cinco. I mean, this guy's more La Central.
Yes, indeed. So, but the next one, like I said, he's a pretty cool character. I'll put it that way. He's very adept on a surfboard, and he's very adept in a kitchen. And so we'll see that. But anyhow, so as you see on the screen here, guys, what we're talking about now, and this is going to be a segment that we're going to have every month now, with canal construction. That was a huge part of canal history, or Canal Zone history, but it was specific to just, the building of the eighth wonder of the world. And it was a 10-year project, right? It took a long time to do. They literally cut through the continental divide. And you're talking in 1904 when they did this. Technology was nowhere near what it is today. There was a lot of technological innovations that came about because of the canal and ways of doing things and operating. So we're going to go over that, and we're going to cover real quick here first a bit of chronology of the year 1904. 1904 was a very interesting year for canal construction. Remember, the Canal Zone, as we learned just a couple of weeks ago, acquisition day was May 4th of 1904. Right, 1903 in November was when the Republic of Panama came to be. The U.S. obviously had a big part in that, and from that point until May 4th, there was a lot of negotiating. Right, there was still a French company out there that had the rights. They had a contract for this. There was a 99-year contract. So just because Panama had set themselves up and the U.S. was coming in here, you still had the French to deal with, right? And there was a lot of things going on there. So the first part of the year, there was a lot going on there, which actually, let me bring that up here. The first part of the year, January 4th, Roosevelt transmits a formal message to Congress relating to the Isthmian Canal. So, again, this is a government project. The United States government is running this, and so now they're going to have to start, it's going to require funding and a lot of logistical things going on. So this is the first time that the president now is formally communicating with Congress on what is going on with the operation. They've now set up the Isthmian Canal Commission, and so they're moving forward there. The next day, January 5th, Secretary of State John Hay dispatches a formal letter to General Rafael Reyes. And Senator Henry Cabot lodges a defend Panama policy with the U.S. Senate. So they're now starting to create rules and regulations on how to run this, how to set foreign policy when it comes to Panama, because you're going to be taken over in a place 1,000 miles away with a country that's brand new, right? And so this country is going to be setting up their own legal codes and their own operations as well. And so it's a great opportunity for them to do that. And this is when the canal then assumes, who's going to start running this. And as you're going to see later on here, the hierarchy here that involves the military. Later on in February, somebody named Elihu Root delivers a address to a a union of in Chicago, right? And again, public perception is a big deal in these times, especially, you know, the United States is coming out to the world as a new industrial power, right? And so there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot of big corporations in America that suddenly are looking at opportunities to grow and expand themselves globally if this canal's a success. So a lot of eyes are on this canal operation from day one, right? And so, you know, this is where you're starting to get this public opinion, right? I found out later on the Canal Record was actually a PR newspaper that was meant to put out the positive message of what the United States was doing in the canal, help motivate the canal workers, but more importantly, let the world know what was going on down there and how much progress the United States was making. So really interesting situation here. And again, we're not even really digging any dirt yet, right? We're
just taking over the assets.
Absolutely right. That's exactly it. We're taking things over. We're figuring out what we have, right? Because we don't know yet what we're working with.
Right, because they were actually preparing to do this canal in Nicaragua.
Correct. Absolutely. In fact, Nicaragua, as we have learned, was the favorite. Okay, It was by a couple of.
Oh yeah, they already had that $40 million
Yes.
approved to spend on that.
They absolutely did. They absolutely did. And so, you know, things were starting to move forward. Now we move into May, which we're you know, in that month now. We talked about this a few weeks ago. May 4th was Acquisition Day, and that was the day that the United States formally took possession of the operation and that area, which then would become the Canal Zone. So that was officially the day it happened. May 9th, they officially assumed control of the project. You know, May 4th was very much pomp and circumstance, a lot of ceremony of lowering a flag, raising another flag. You know, we learned about that lieutenant. They kind of just happened to be the highest ranking guy at the moment here. So you're the man. So, but this is where it's now it's starting to take shape. We're looking at this, and it's going to now become an operation. We're going to start, you know, putting, you know, feet on the ground and making things happen. So now we're going to start to really understand how the setup works, what's going to happen, and how this is going to function moving forward. Because, as I said, this is a 10-year project, right? This is not going to be a short-term, you know, situation here. At the top of the bureaucracy here, which will end up being a big problem, as we're going to learn later on. But the way it broke down was it started at the top with President Roosevelt, right? Roosevelt played he had a big hand in this whole canal operation, whether it was Nicaragua or Panama. He did lean towards Panama, but the majority of people still were liking Nicaragua. But this was a pet project of his, right? This is something he campaigned on. This is something that was a really big deal to him. So he personally wanted to supervise a lot of what was going on. From there, it went down to the Secretary of War. Okay, this entire project always fell under the guise of the military. And it's funny that we were talking about it earlier, that, you know, there's a whole neutrality treaty, and it really isn't something that is supposed to be a strategic asset, certainly a strategic military asset. But let's not kid ourselves. The United States looked at it from day one as a military asset. There's no ands or buts about it. And for all of us growing down in the zone, you didn't have to look in any direction more than about 5 miles and you saw a military base. So the military definitely played a huge, huge role in the canal. And in this case, even from early on in the construction, they were put, you know, basically front and center there. You know, below them was that Isthmian Canal Commission. Right. And this was a group, a board, an advisory board, a decision-making board that
they have today.
Absolutely. But here's where one of the big problems started right from the get-go. This Isthmian Canal Commission was in Washington. And it would be difficult in today's world to manage a project from that far away, let alone in 1904 with much more limited communication, limited logistics, and everything else.
AI was a little slow back then.
Yeah, it sure was, man. There was no IBMs out there and whatnot. So it was just a nightmare to get anything done. It was a bureaucratic nightmare. And as we're going to learn, like I said, later on, a year later, they had to make some huge, huge changes because this was just such a big problem there. But this is the way the layout was. You know, you had that Isthmian Canal Commission, and then in Panama itself, you had two basic pillars of authority there. You had the governor of the canal zone, and then you had the executive secretary, which basically was the position to enforce a lot of the laws and regulations, where the governor was really somebody that was more of an administrator of the canal project, right? As we
Yeah,
know,
because
a
he
lot
was
of
always
those-
an engineer.
Absolutely, and we learned that from the get-go, that you had to have that role, because everything about this was engineering for at least for the first 10 or 15 years, until you had a functioning canal and a government and a system there. But it's going to be interesting to learn here later on, how the infrastructure itself was built, right? Because we started doing a lot of things here, but we were really laying the foundation to be able to successfully build a canal down the road. We were learning a lot of things as we went, but we did know a couple of things, and we did do a couple of smart things here. This one's really interesting. It started back in February, where the early legal precedents were established, right? You had now a zone that was administered by the United States, right? They had a perpetuity lease. We know it was 99 years, but they had a perpetuity lease, and they basically were going to set the rules in there. But as we all know, growing up in the canal zone, it literally was just the name of a street was the border. There was no fences, there was no gates, there was no walls, and so you really had a very much a blending of the two cultures very easily. And so part of what they had to do was establish laws that respected both countries, right? And made it something that could be functioned with. And that's what they started doing here. On May 9th, there was an executive order that mandated the Civil Code of Panama is continued in force in the canal zone. Because you had a lot of people coming across, not as many back then, because they did have a very much a divided, workforce, I guess. But eventually, certainly when we grew up there was a lot more free movement of back and forth between Panama and the United States. And so it made sense to have overlapping, legal codes, right? It just really, really made sense to do that. And then here's an interesting one. I didn't realize this until doing this research for this segment. July 4th, we know it as independence for the United States. But guess what? That's the birthday of the Canal Zone Police. It was July 4th. Right. That's when they were established. So they set them up. They took a bunch of people, former Army. I think 90% of them were former Army because of obviously the structure, the discipline, and everything else. And it made sense to get something new, started out there. And then the other big piece.
Well, your dad is an example of that. He was former 100%. Air Force.
Yep, yeah. That's exactly right, 100%. And a lot of other folks that did that went from military to the Canal Zone Police. And then even, like, for example, my brother-in-law, he served in the Army as an MP, military police, and from there he got out of the military and joined the Wisconsin State Police. So it makes sense, right? One is a logical step for the other. But the other really big thing involving law enforcement and the Canal Zone, which was really, really big in establishing the Canal Zone, was on September 3rd, they put in a new penal code for the Canal Zone. And one of the biggest pieces of that penal code was the convict clause. Okay, and the convict clause basically said that involuntary servitude, right, in other words, labor, was authorized as a punishment for crimes. Okay, and what they did, the labor that these guys did, was basically build the infrastructure for the Canal Zone. The sewers, the roads, they laid out Balboa, they laid out all these town sites. That construction was not done by the canal construction workers. It was done by convicts. And part of your sentence was to build the Canal Zone. So that was kind of interesting that they came up with that rule there to make that change there. The other big thing that they started doing, obviously, as we know, one of the big reasons that the French project failed was you couldn't keep people alive. It was just, what did we learn about the first chief engineer? Wallace. He arrived with a coffin, a lead coffin. So that was the thought process of going to Panama was, man, it's a coin flip whether you're going to make it out of there alive.
You're going to make it alive.
Yeah, certainly, and unfortunately, the French and everybody prior to the United States coming in thought that it was, yellow fever and malaria was caused by bad air. And they finally realized, through Gorgas and what he had learned in Cuba, earlier on, that no, that it's through these mosquitoes. And so June 30th is when the formal effort started to kick off for the United States to start to eradicate yellow fever and malaria by controlling the mosquitoes. It really didn't go into full swing until 1905, as we're going to learn here, but it was now recognized that, hey, this can be beat. You just got to do it the right way, and you got to take the right approach. And this is one of the things that Gorgas is famous around the world for is his battles with mosquitoes and whatnot. So a couple interesting stats here when it comes to those mosquitoes. And the one that really sticks out to me was on the bottom there, the result of this. Okay, malaria death rates went from 16 people for every 1,000, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're bringing in 20, 30,000 people and you're losing 100, 200 of these people every couple of weeks or whatever, it's going to start costing money and just replenishing people, right? You got to start hiring people again. You're bringing people in that you have to train them now. And so there's nothing good about it, but that rate went from 16.2 per thousand to 2.6 per thousand, which is incredible, the number to shrink that, which shows you how prevalent that mosquito problem was. And once you took care of the mosquitoes, it really quickly got rid of these things. You know, the other thing about this, the benefit of this was a benefit to Panama itself, because mosquitoes don't know borders, right? And so you couldn't just eradicate mosquitoes in the canals and expect it to be fine if you had them all in Panama. So, you know,
they cleaned up the whole city.
They
and
repaved
built
the whole
and
city.
everything.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that was part of the deal.
Absolutely
that nobody
was.
speaks of.
Correct. And like you say, it shows right here, you know, that, you know, part of that, starting in July 19th, the Division of Municipal Engineering is established because they recognize, hey, you know, we got to build the canal zone, but right across the street over here, this Panama City place is a dump. And there's water everywhere. It's the tropics. You're never going to get rid of mosquitoes unless you fix Panama as well. And Panama was in no position to do that. Heck, they were just born, right? They're just a brand new country. They don't have anything to set that up. So, you know, a great benefit to Panama here was that it really, you know, it allowed them to kick off a new country with a great capital and with a great infrastructure already built in.
Yeah, the part of the transaction was also to fund the Panamanian government. I think it was like 10 million.
10 million. But here's what's interesting. That 10 million, they didn't give it to them right away. They took a lot of that money and they invested it in New York real estate to prop up the real estate, get a good return on it, though, because the truth is they didn't trust the Panamanian government, and rightly so. You know, these guys are brand new. Right. Absolutely they are. So, but you finish doing this, and all of a sudden, Panama is one of the most modern cities in all of Latin America. And they've only been around as a country for a year and a year plus. So that was a really big kind of hidden benefit of the canal and this whole mosquito issue was that Panama got some really, really great infrastructure out of it. Then in November, something interesting happened here that we didn't really pay attention to and didn't really know this had already happened.
You got me by surprise when I saw this on my notes.
Did.
I'm like,
sure
what?
Did. So as you see on the screen there, of course, you see Panama and you see the United States Marine Corps emblem on the bottom there, and you see those ships there. So in November of 1904, 1 year after independence, there's really, really strong rumors that there's going to be a coup, that the Panamanian government is about to be overthrown. And Roosevelt got wind of this, and he sent Marines there. And he sent Marines to go ahead and quell this. And so this was a really, really big deal, you know, because, again, you're only a year out from this. Let me see, HB, my great-grandfather, J. Jackson, they wanted to send him to Panama. He survived the Boxer, but that's in China, by the way, in Cuba and the Philippines. Damn. When they said Panama, he said, no way. You see? And let me tell you what, when he's listening there, that Boxer Rebellion, that Cuba and the Philippines, Cuba had a huge disease problem as well. That just shows you how
Gorgas
bad
was
Panama was. That people that have survived that are saying, "Well, hey, I ain't getting over there in that business there." But anyhow, so this is what we're looking at in November. Okay, going back a ways, of course, as you can see on that map on the upper left, you know, you had Gran Colombia, and Panama was part of one of those provinces. At one point, it became New Grenada. A couple different iterations of it involved at some point Ecuador for a while, Venezuela as well, and of course Panama. And then of course you had the United States of Colombia, which kind of was a federal group of states as well. But long story short, come November 3rd, 1903, Panama declares its independence. Panama is now no longer a renegade province. It is now an independent country. Colombia doesn't like it, but some monies have been exchanged, some things have happened. Not to mention some battleships pulled into the port there in Panama, and that was kind of enough for Colombia to say, all right, well, we'll have to talk about this.
Well, the U.S. also paid Colombia $10 million.
Sure did. It wasn't just taken from them; they got paid, even though Panama was an independent country, and the U.S. could have ruled and said, hey, sorry,
F
but
you,
we don't recognize
them
you.
off.
But they still did it anyway, right? They still maintained some good order there. If you recall from Dave Dahlstrom, who just chimed in here just a moment ago, we learned that one of the areas during that 1903 turnover was they were counting on military action from the Colombian soldiers in that area there, and there was a general that decided not to do it. Right, Ricky?
Huertas, right. He was the general that he could have been a general, he could have been a lieutenant colonel. I don't recall, but he was the one that flipped, and with the governor of Panama, Ovaldía, they flipped and then took the Panamanian side.
That's exactly right. Right. And so you're right. Maybe he was a colonel, but I guess once he flipped and helped them, they probably took him and made him the general in charge in the country and whatnot, because now he helped them and he's got leadership skills, whatever. So bottom line is he is now part of the Panamanian military establishment. And rumor and from what we've been reading, him and Amador, who was the first president of Panama, they had a warm, cold relationship, right? They worked together. It was almost the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I guess you could call it, right?
Right.
But as now a year's going by, things are maybe not turning out the way this guy might have liked. Who knows what the case is, but turns out that it looks like this General Huertas is going to attempt to overthrow the government.
It kind of makes sense because remember, Colombia had a treaty with the U.S. in 1850, might have been a little bit earlier,
right,
to bring U.S. troops to Panama to protect Panama for Colombia.
Yes.
And no matter what happened, it'll stay Colombia. Now, Willie, Panama's always been protected by a world power. In the 1500s by the Spaniards.
Panama's an asset.
Then Bolivar, Simon Bolivar.
It shows what a big
Colombia.
asset Panama is. That somebody's always willing to protect it and step up.
And then the U.S. But people think that the U.S. came under Panama. That's not true. The U.S. came to Panama under Colombia.
Yeah, right.
Colombians.
Well, remember,
were the ones
guys, the
that
Panama
brought it.
Road had been there for 50 years before the U.S. stepped in there.
And Willie, the U.S. presence in Panama intervened 10 different times.
Yes,
to help Colombia maintain Panama as Colombian. So Huertas was probably thinking, oh, these guys have 10 times
they'll come and go.
Protected Colombia. I'm going to do this coup. Because I didn't know about this, but this makes sense, putting the dots together.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this coup and take over and get rid of Amador, Guerrero, and Arango and those guys, because those guys were a little bit aligned to the liberal movement that fought against the Colombian government, the liberals against conservative. So kind of makes sense. Well,
no,
he
it
misjudged.
does, and I mean, the guy switched teams one time. So,
once you switch teams, right.
You've shown it. The loyalty's not always
Roosevelt
there.
said, nah, I don't think
Yeah, he
so.
did. Roosevelt came back
The
in.
Panamanians were solid with us. We're sticking with the Panamanians. Sure. Yeah.
And that was the first time then that the Panamanian government dissolved their military. And they said, hey, you know what? We're going to go ahead and let you guys protect us. We'll set up a police force, but we'll let you guys be our military and protect us there. And I mean, it made sense because the U.S. had their own vested interest, obviously, with the canal there. So it wasn't like it was an agreement that you could never, there are certain places you have these agreements and, well, can you really count on them to step in when the shit hits the fan? Well, you have the Panama Canal there, so the United States is going to step in no matter what. So it was an easy decision to make that change. But it was just really interesting that November, 1 year later, and here we're already talking about, hey, man, it's time for you
already
to go,
a coup.
These guys like, the paint hasn't dried yet, man. Come on, give me a break, man. So, but that was, that again, 1904 was a very, very transitional year for Panama and for the Canal Zone.
And the world, man.
Yes,
because this could have gone any other, this could have gone so many different directions. I mean, it could have all ended up in Nicaragua,
Absolutely. Nicaragua, and as we see now, maybe even Mexico down the road there. But bottom line is we get to December of 1904, and now we get that first annual report of the Isthmian Canal Commission. And this annual report became a big deal because, again, you're talking major money here. You're talking, major clout around the world, right? The whole world is watching, and so they want to make sure this is going on. And remember, what was the first thing that Roosevelt said when they came in there and they started this whole operation?
Wasn't it blast, baby, blast, or something like that?
Make the dirt fly.
Oh, make the dirt fly. Yeah,
The same thing, though, really. Blast, baby, blast, make the dirt fly. Either one. In other words, he's saying, we need this damn canal done, right? And they get to the end of the year.
27,000 tons of dynamite was used. So, that's a lot of blasting.
It wasn't a weekend project. It wasn't no DIY project. But so the annual report comes out, okay? And remember we talked about how this one guy gave that speech in front of the Chicago Union of whatever's, right? And so, again, this is not just something that maybe Congress wants to see. A lot of people in America want to see this. A lot of taxpayers, right? They want to see where their dollars are going
huge. Our biggest infrastructure project ever.
Again, it was our coming out party to the world, okay? And what do we find out? Not a lot of dirt flying. People are not happy. Yep. But what they didn't understand was that United States was creating something, and this was a massive undertaking, right? Again, we're looking 1903, 1904, not 2025, okay? So the means of getting these things around, the means of communicating weren't quite there. We saw how that early setup was now causing some issues here, because when you're making decisions in Washington and someone says, hey, we need this, that, and the other, and you have to wait to get that communicated up there and then have some committee meetings.
He just showed us the ladder.
Yes.
Had to go up several
and the
layers.
people at the top of that ladder probably have never set foot in Panama, and they have no idea what they're really talking about there. And so it just created all this bureaucracy, all this red tape, which really screwed things up. And that was probably the real downside of 1904, okay? Because there was really two halves to this tale here of 1904. This part here was that, man, we didn't do shit. Truth is, we did a lot, but we didn't dig a whole lot there. We found out that we really couldn't. We didn't have the setup. We didn't have the equipment and stuff.
Wait. If we're going to measure, Willie, Nicaragua Canal that the Chinese are building, they're on their year 10. They still haven't done this report.
Right. Oh, 100%. It's 100%, man.
So
yeah,
we're only like a month, right. So these guys are pretty good.
You absolutely couldn't be more right about that. And so what we end up coming up with then is, it's a bad report, but what we're talking about or what we want to look at then is, well, wait a minute, that's only one side of this coin here, right? Because remember, we come into this thing off of a French operation. That $40 million was mostly to buy the French operation, right? Which included
they actually wanted 100 and something million.
They sure
got
did.
shortchanged brutally.
They sure did. They had a much better deal. In fact, you talk about some shortchanging deals. The deal that United States had with Colombia included revenue sharing on the canal, included a lot of other limitations, and had a clause in there to, after 100 years, give the canal back to Colombia.
They were just greedy.
And so, and they got more greedy, and finally the United States said, wait a minute, I got somebody here that'll take a hell of a lot less, and they'll be our friends for a long time, as we're seeing here 125 years later. They're still our friends. So,
but the truth is, listen, Willie, guys, I am going to interrupt you, but there's so much great stuff happening in Panama. This week, one of the top, he's a professor at the university. He's a geopolitical expert in Panama.
Right.
And he came on Radio Panama and mentioned what we're talking about now. I just lost my train of thought. So I apologize for interrupting.
Okay. Well,
until I remember what the heck I was thinking. But
right,
there was what is going on now. I don't come back.
Well, anyhow, so
sorry.
So that component of it was, what we were trying to set up and get things started, not to mention what we found out we had there, right? Because we had a lot of great things there, but we also found out we had a lot of things that weren't working. Go ahead. You got it. Okay. I saw the light bulb.
All right. You know how this is what it was. This historian expert, what he said was that Roosevelt was so upset with the Colombians that he said, F it, I'm going to Nicaragua. And then the Panamanians, this is what is very important, said, no way. we wanted to do business with you guys before you go.
Well, they wanted a country.
The story is like the other way around. Like the United States tricked the Panamanians, and the Panamanians had to bite the bullet and bullshit. They were on their way out, and they didn't want them to leave. So that's why 98 out of 100 voted to stick with the U.S. because they were on their way out to Nicaragua.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. It's. I mean, the group in Panama, okay, call them the rebels, okay, because they were Colombian rebels. Okay,
they were the Junta
They wanted their
Revolucionaria.
independence. They're no different than our founding fathers in the 13 colonies of the United States. Okay, and when the United States says, "Hey, we're gonna get out of here," they're like, "Whoa, man," because there goes your independence. Because Colombia gets a canal in there, guess what? They're going to beef up their military forces and everything else because that's a strategic point now. And
Plus,
there
they
goes
already had that treaty with the U.S.
You got it. So there goes any chance of Panama ever becoming independent. So those guys, they said, "Nah, let's go and bring this deal back. We're not losing this deal. It's damn close."
This narrative is hopefully going to be the one that they talk about in history now versus the other one that I said from that book that, we ripped them off and this and that. And they were part of this. And I got,
you're absolutely right.
Oh, BS.
And that's what we do here is we set the record straight on what the real history is out there, so let you guys know. But anyhow, so let's switch gears here. The other part of 1904 that is absolutely critical to this whole operation is that the United States is ready to start digging a canal, but they don't have the equipment to do it yet. They're going to start ordering it and bringing stuff in, that famous Bucyrus, steam shovel, but they don't have that stuff down here now. What they do have,
all
though,
the dredging
is
equipment.
a ton of equipment from the French. And that's what we're going to talk about here because that was the other big part of 1904. And the part that I guess maybe you could look at as a lot more successful was this audit, okay? Because when we think of the audit, the most obvious things are like some dredges. We've seen pictures of those old, they call them those stair dredges or whatever, the bucket dredges that have, it's just a conveyor belt of buckets, going in a circle and scooping up and moving up and whatnot.
Yeah, little tiny trains.
They were, exactly. But it was nonetheless still equipment that was usable, right? The French did dig a pretty decent amount out of Panama, okay? The operation ultimately was a failure. But it's not like they didn't dig, okay? We used a lot of the stuff that they did there, so they did have some capable equipment. But as we're going to see, some of it we ended up repurposing for other things and others scrapping it. But there was a lot of great stuff there. That $40 million purchase, we had to figure out what we got, okay? And it was a really interesting mechanism for getting credit for stuff that they used versus stuff that they sold in exchange for some of that $40 million. Kind of interesting how they did that. But so the first thing that we're looking at then with these guys is, a lot of the different assets that we're talking about here, okay? There was, the Walker Commission is what they end up calling it, was the people that actually ended up, setting up this whole inventory, this whole audit, right, to figure out what it is we have here, how much we may need to replace, what we can use, etc. Okay, and so they broke it up into 4 different segments. Okay, they had rolling stock and rail, right? You can't move anything around without rail, and rolling stock basically means how many carts, how many trucks you have in there. Okay, you have your locomotive, and then all the cars behind it. That's considered your rolling stock. The French dug more in the first year. They sure as heck did. They absolutely did. The United States was buried in their own bureaucracy. In addition to try and rehab a lot of this stuff and just kind of get an idea of what they were facing here, right? So anyhow, the other section they were looking at was that floating equipment. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you, man. The floating equipment. Right? They were already starting to dredge things out. Remember, the canal on both ends, they didn't build it just from the center out. They also built from the outside in, right? And coming in the Atlantic side, they had to dredge that Limon Bay area. On the Pacific side, they had to start digging that channel and stuff. So they were working on it already. And so they had some dredges and equipment that we were able to salvage, find some of it in many cases. They had buildings and housing. And you're going to see here, we found some incredible facilities that we rehabbed and used them. And a lot of the buildings, a lot of the early stuff that we had, we were using the French stuff, and then we later on would either rebuild it or whatever. But and not just housing for personnel. I mean, some warehousing and stuff. You're going to see some amazing stuff there. And then scrap metal and shop machinery. And this part is interesting because they actually had foundries in the zone where they would take a lot of this I won't say a lot, but some of this French equipment that was not usable. And where they could, they would take those pieces off, they would melt it down, and they would make their own replacement parts, right? And so, again, you're talking about a very self-sufficient operation, and part of it was maybe not having to wait 6 weeks for a part to be shipped in from California when you were, making your own here in the Canal Zone and expediting that whole process. So, part of that 1904 was, again, to make sure that what we're doing here and what we're getting out of here is going to be functional for us, okay? So, looking at that rolling stock, okay, they call it the Chagres tally because they found a lot of that stuff in that interior area there, okay? And they found 645 dump cars, or they were using 645 active dump cars in 1904. Out of those, 410 were refurbished French. So look at the initial investment in dump cars. They didn't have to get that many because they already had a bunch sitting right there, right? So that gave them a kind of a head start there.
They call those spoil trains too, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because again, you envision these guys digging all this rock and stuff and they put it on a car. You got to take it somewhere. Okay. And out the causeway and Balboa. Listen, when we're playing football in Balboa Stadium, that used to be a swamp below us, right? That Albrook Air Force, that runway was all a swamp down there. So that was the stuff they had to move, and they had all these cars to do it. 47 of the 50 locomotives, and again, 410 of the 645 dump cars active in the Chagres division were refurbished French stock. So you almost had the entire stock that was already in place or, needed some fixing up.
Good recycling. Yeah.
It was,
Efficient.
certainly.
Yeah.
Overall,
Military.
659 French cars and a portion of 300 active locomotives were rehabilitated for the excavation. So, again, kudos to these guys where they were able to take something. One of the things I found interesting when in reading on some of these sources, one of the reasons why they were able to refurbish and preserve these things was that the French understood the elements in the tropics in Panama were so corrosive that they put real thick coats of paint all over this equipment.
Gotcha.
And it protected a lot of it. And that's why when the stuff that they found in swamps completely covered in brush, had grown over it. And yet when they cleared it out and pulled it out, they were able to refurbish it because they had so much paint on it, it protected it from actually, getting eaten up by the elements. So I thought that was a really, really interesting story there. So
right, because they didn't have stainless steel back in that time.
No, heck no, and not to that amount. I mean, again, you're talking about equipment that was brought in 20 years before, right? The French operation started in the 1880s. Okay, it went 1880s, 1890s, and then it failed, and that stuff sat there for almost a decade.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah, before we got to it. So again, that's kind of a testament to their ability to preserve it, right? But it gave us a great opportunity, to get some work started. But the truth be told, these guys were using equipment that was meant for other locations.
Look at how small those things are. They were trying to fill that up with dirt, man. That looks like those, like I said, a couple of weeks back, those trains that you take those rides on at Disney World.
They do. That's exactly what it's like.
It's a small world after all. Those kind of.
It really is. And these things were used by the French a lot in Suez and whatnot, where you actually had people with hand shovels digging and filling these things up. Right.
Suez,
and you can just imagine, that thing pulls up and this big giant Bucyrus steam shovel grabs a whole scoop and just flattens the whole thing out because that scoop itself is probably bigger than this car.
Well, that was one of the reasons that the French failed was they couldn't get the dirt out fast enough. So things would just completely cave in and, they just couldn't get ahead.
You're absolutely right. And we're going to find out here in a moment that that's not only a something the French failed on, but we failed on that as well, and we learned that lesson ourselves in the first year, that we were not anywhere near the position we should have been to be able to do these things, right?
Correct.
But again, the inventory continues. We talked about that initial, the rail cars and whatnot, but then we had, the floating equipment, right? These dredges. Right, we found some dredges that they were assigned to excavate Limon Bay in those areas, and again, we repurposed a lot of these. We took a lot of their dredges, which didn't have the lifting capacity. But again, remember back in the 1880s, 1890s, and the 1900s, everything was steam. Okay, so the machinery, the concept of how it worked was the same. It's just rearranging pulleys, putting pulleys in different places, different cables and ropes, and make an arm or a device do something different. But you still use the main component was that whole giant steam engine. So they took a lot of these dredges, and they, as we learned last week, they ended up making them those sand dredges. They would have the big scoops on them, and they would be able to scoop up the sand, like the ones that went to Chama and dig up that sand and things like that. So, they may not have taken that dredge and put it back to work the way it was originally, but they used it anyway. It was still a big, valuable piece of equipment that they were able to repurpose for something else, which you're going to need anyhow. Part of that whole, dredging component, that whole operation there. So this was interesting here, some of what they did with some of these dredges, some of that equipment, right? They found French dredge number 3. They converted it to a double-ended clamshell, which again was able to dip down and just scoop up sand, right? It's not going to break up rock. It's not going to yank up, big chunks of earth like that, but it can sure grab a big, giant bucket full of sand, dump those on barges, and pretty soon go 20 miles, up the shore there, and you're now in the Balboa Harbor, and you got a ton of sand now to use there. So interesting how they did that. The French dredge Nombre was converted to a 12-inch pipeline, right? And that was used for pumping. A lot of what they had to do back then, remember, you're still in a very rural area in Panama, so moving a lot of stuff, it was easier to just pump it through piping in different areas there, and that's what they probably used this dredge.
All these areas, yeah.
Sure. And again, there's a couple others on here, the 16-inch French hull, the frijoles, the boilers were removed and fitted with some drills there, so it became a drill barge, right? A lot of the areas in Culebra we learned, to get below there and to break that rock up properly, they would have to drill holes and put, different explosives timed properly to break it up in the direction they wanted it, right? And so a lot of that required, these drills here. The La Boca scrap stock, and so again, they took a bunch of different scrap and put it together and built, some 100-ton coal barges. This is something interesting that I read. It had nothing to do with this barge situation, but another one of those, unheard of jobs, but critically important, was every night, and you're talking in the dark at between like 10 o'clock at night and about 3 o'clock in the morning, you had the coal trains running all over that canal operation. And they were going and dropping off loads of coal for all the steam shovels, all the steam dredges, all these things. Their fuel was coal. And you couldn't have a steam shovel digging, running low on fuel, and turn around and run back up to the shop to grab coal. They had big areas set up with coal, but it was just constantly being used. So that was one of those jobs that you had to do. You didn't have a lot of lighting out there at that time, so you're working in the dark a lot of times, pouring rain during the rainy season, but you got to get those, because if they get out there in the morning and that coal train hasn't made it there, there's no work, right? Everything relied on that coal, man. Yeah. So it was just fascinating that these are the things that we don't think about, but when it came to the construction, these are why these projects were so monumental, man, because, there are thousands of moving parts, literally, The Tug de Lesseps was repaired and recommissioned for towing, right? Because a lot of times you're using barges and things of that nature. A big dredge, it doesn't have a bunch of mercury outboards on it and it goes, zipping around all over the place. A lot of these things are moved by tugs and different things. They set up, they anchor down, and they start doing their work. So a lot of good equipment that we got from the French there to take care of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, because the going story on the French equipment was that it was all garbage and it was useless. And now we're learning that's not true at all.
Exactly.
Almost 60 to 70% of it was repurposed.
Yep, no, absolutely. And here's something really interesting on this map here. The map it's vertical, it's not horizontal, right? Of course, so you're looking at really what you're looking at north-south is really east-west in Panama. Okay? But what they're talking about is the concentration of equipment and how it ended up in so many different places. And you see a lot of these, it looks like it's in eastern Panama, heck, all the way out towards the Darien. But some of that stuff was probably where you get sand and things of that nature, because apparently there's different kinds of sand. We learned the other day from Dave that Portobello, right, was kind of out of the way, but the stone there was necessary, for the concrete in Gatun. So, this is where they found a lot of this stuff. And like anything else, you think of, look at Spirit Airlines the other day. Where those planes landed, that's where they turned them off, and that's where you're staying until they figure out what to do with them, right? Same thing here. All of a sudden, one day, they're like, hey, man, don't go to work today. What do you mean? The company just went broke. The French company. Well, that stuff just stayed there. Nobody got it and drove it over there. They're like, all right, get out of the equipment and go home. That's the end of the operation. And 20 years later, 10 years later, the United States comes in and you got stuff that's 20 miles out of town somewhere there. But when they send a crew to go look at it and they start digging through it, they're like, hey, this thing works, man. And this is a $5 million machine. Yeah, we need it. So there was a lot of stuff spread out there. But once they got it, it really gave Panama or the United States a head start on building that canal, because otherwise they would have been another full year behind. So I thought that
more
was,
to get all the equipment down there, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. The other thing that we were talking about that was, part of this transaction was the infrastructure, right? These locations, these warehouses. And in Bas Matachin, they found a huge warehouse, 60-foot by 250-foot warehouse that was in the jungle itself. Okay, and they repaired that thing, and it rivaled the best storehouse in the Isthmus. And Bas Matachin, that was towards the center of the area there, which, as you recall, a lot of stuff ended up being there because the bulk of that work ended up being in that Culebra area. But this was a huge asset for them, was to find this warehouse there that they could suddenly say, hey, wait a minute, we got a great asset here that we can use, and that's one less thing we have to build. Right, and so big find there.
Yeah, it's under the Gatun Lake now.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't dig that thing back up. But so something interesting that they did here with like I said, with a lot of what they did there, a lot of the early infrastructure they built here was to help support their infrastructure, if that makes sense. They built these foundries and these big melting furnaces in Gorgona where they had a lot of equipment they just couldn't use. If they talk about that one dredge where they took out, the whole, steam boiler and everything else, and they put, racks on it for drill. Well, guess what? There's a lot of metal in that stuff. Throw that into a foundry, melt it, and you now have molds to build your spare parts. And in 1900, there was no Amazon. You weren't getting stuff here by tomorrow morning. So it made sense to support this operation and keep it running constantly, is to repurpose.
The size of this restoring and recycling, I mean, this is like modern day way of doing things. Massive. It was by necessity, but again, this was part of what they figured out was the most efficient way of running these things, right? And just absolutely make it work to their best opportunities. And again, this is all part of that $40 million. What we figured out that we could use, we did, and we took that out for that $40 million. What we couldn't, and vice versa, we would get credits for it. So they had a system in place to identify this stuff and what, because it's not like they cut, whoever it was, France or Bunavaria or whoever, a $40 million check, right? This was going to be something that was going to be paid in installments, and they were going to figure stuff out coming back and forth based on what they found. You told me I had 100 locomotives. You gave me 20 locomotives. I need some money back, right? He didn't get 40 million, but remember, he got the biggest commission check ever.
Sure
like
did.
2.6 million, which today was like billions or something like that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So again, looking at this $40 million ROI. Okay.
Return on investment.
There was worthless abandoned equipment. It was not a political gamble, as they said, because some of this stuff you could turn around and repurpose it, or you could just melt it down. If you weren't going to do that, you could sell it as scrap, right? It's kind of interesting to look at this, from a lot of poor Latin American countries, but a lot of their construction early on sometimes is a little on the rickety side, and you never know where some of this stuff is useful to somebody else, who's building a country, right? That steam boiler may not be useful to the Americans in their construction, but there may be a place in Panama City that could use a boiler to run a small factory to make furniture or something, right? And so they're more than happy to buy that. So nothing went to waste. I mean, if it went to waste, it really, truly had no purpose whatsoever or no value at all.
So that's like Section I started way back then.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. That's exactly what that was, So, really, really interesting, that other component of what it was, to be in this, in this whole construction, again, this first year of the Canal Zone, because the first year of the Canal Zone, as we see from the annual report, the first year was not that successful of a year. It was, hold on, let me do something.
Engineering, rearranging, yeah.
No, it really was. You first of all had to figure out what it was you had, right? You still had to figure out all of those things. But as we saw, there was a setup that they had that was running everything from Washington D.C., and that in itself was not gonna work. Okay, and there was a lot of political pressure on Roosevelt and in Washington as to why after 1 year nothing's really happening.
And
right?
40 million was a lot of money. Plus
Sure
everybody
was.
else being
Sure
paid out.
was.
25 for the Colombians, 10 for the Panamanians,
Absolutely.
10 for the railroad. Ooh.
No, it certainly was. And so one of the things that you'll find is that, we're looking at this chronologically from, the year 1904. And really, as we saw January and February, not a whole lot going on. March, really nothing of substance going on. It wasn't until April and May when, things started to get signed, paperwork signed, officially take over here and there. And then we started these operations, right? And so same thing, carries over where you really could almost look at the clock starting May 4th of 1904 and then see where we're at in May 4th of 1905. And that's where we really had the first big pivot, okay? And this is where John Stevens took over as chief engineer. Okay,
the first year was what was the Williams? No, what's the first guy's name?
Wallace. John Finley Wallace. And here's
Poor
something
guy.
you'll find that's interesting, right? We got the Goethals Memorial. We have Stevens Circle. Do you guys remember anything named Wallace in the zone? The guy didn't get a whole lot of love, man. And in all honesty,
love.
He didn't. And if you had to look at it just from a neutral standpoint and maybe be a little harsh, he was a failure. Okay, from what they wanted. Okay,
because he wasn't military. That's part of the reason.
Well, part of the reason for that, he was very passive, very bureaucratic. They brought in Stevens and they brought in the governor Davis, and these guys, they really were pivotal. Stevens gets a lot of the credit, but Davis was just as instrumental in getting things done in the Canal Zone. But one of the things that was really critical there was that Stevens was a railroad guy. Mm-hmm. Stevens had built railroads. And he understood that the Panama Canal construction project was not really a construction project. It was a railroad project. And what he meant by that was that you can have all the steam shovels you want. You can have the best equipment. You can have everything you want there. But if you can't move the dirt, it's pointless.
Right. He called this division, he called it the Army behind the Army, Willie.
Yeah.
And the reason why was because the enemy was actually on top of all the jungle diseases was Earth itself.
Yes, our own productivity.
Yep.
The more we dug, the faster we dug, the bigger the problem we created.
Correct.
And we looked at those little cars, those little Duville cars. It's like, come on. I mean, my God, it's going to take 30 years to dig this canal at that rate with those little things. They're built for hand shovels, right? And so he also recognized that the railroad itself was so dilapidated by that point. You got to remember the Panama Railroad now had been running for 50 years plus, okay? And so it was in really, really bad shape. Some of it had to be moved anyway. Here's something really interesting. You've already started doing some digging. You started repurposing equipment. You've got things all mapped out. And guess what? You still haven't even decided whether it's going to be a sea level canal or a lock-based canal.
Yeah,
they hadn't even finalized that yet.
First year, right?
So that was part of what was going on where they finally came to and decided we're going to do a lock-based canal. So this is the equipment we need. Stephen comes in and says, hey, we need a brand new railroad. He actually halted all operations. Okay. He arrived just about the same time that Gorgas came back. And they got together and he recognized what Gorgas was saying. Gorgas had found out that the mosquito was the problem, but Wallace didn't play along with it. Wallace didn't believe it. There was still a lot of people believe that it was bad air, which is kind of bizarre to think about that now, but that was a belief back then. And so, even though Wallace said, okay, look, do what you got to do, get rid of these mosquitoes, he really didn't give him a lot of support. And you still were losing a lot of lives, okay? You still had people that were reluctant to go to Panama because they knew this place was a death trap. And when Stevens came in, he finally recognizes, I got to imagine that his first day there, he arrives and sees a train going by, and the last two cars of it are casket trains. That's, and this is on a daily basis. That's got to be eye-opening. And you start recognizing, wait a minute, man, we're trying to scoop water out for high tide with cups in our hand, right? And so they halted everything. They said, we're going to rebuild this railroad. We're going to take all our workers, and you're going to now either going to be part of the railroad operation or part of the sanitation operation. But we're going to clean everything up, and once that's ready to go, then we have what we need to start building the canal. And that's really what happened there. That's where that pivot came in. The other big issue that they took care of there was the Isthmian Canal Commission, and the head of this operation now was in Panama. It was no longer in Washington. And now you could get things done because as we learned from Stevens and later on with Goethals, he had his yellow train car.
Wait,
right?
And Willie, this is one of the reasons why they built the Tivoli Hotel, was to put these guys, these top guys.
Exactly right. They're up in Washington and in wherever some high posh location there, and now you're going to come to live in this dump here of Panama in the Canal Zone. No, we got to hook you up and put you into something.
But what
nice.
Stevens did, I'm getting ahead of myself here. What Stevens did with the Tivoli was he didn't want Panama to feel like we were putting this massive hotel of luxury,
right?
Right in their faces. So the first one, he called it a labor workers, like a
rest house.
A guest house for the workers.
Yeah.
And then with all the intentions of after the construction to convert it into a world class, which you will learn more about.
Which it absolutely did. But that was necessary because now you could run a more efficient operation. Right. And at that point, now it started becoming something that was viable. You could see the light at the end of the tunnel, though, although it was still a ways off because you're still 9 years away. But now you started putting in now you started getting the.
They got
American
a good foundation,
equipment.
is what he did.
They absolutely did. There was another section we were going to talk about, but we ran a little bit long tonight, which was the supply section, because that's something they did immediately. Okay, they set up, not immediately in 1905 when they did this whole pivot. They suddenly upgraded the whole Cristobal area, right, to bring in more supplies. In 1904, you had stuff sitting on the docks that was just rotting because they had no way of distributing it. You had supplies just going to waste because no way of moving it.
No way of getting it out.
And that was the problems they had. And so once they retooled everything, then it really started kicking off. So 1904 was not a good year in one sense, but it did establish a foundation. 1905, they recognized what they did wrong. That was the big issue with the French and de Lesseps. They kept insisting they were going to do it this way, come hell or high water. And, well, guess what? Hell and high water came, and they never finished it.
Yeah,
the Americans realized, hey, this ain't working, man. And Stevens came in, and for the next year, he really, really did upgrade the railroad and do all the things they needed to now have, what would be the real canal construction operation. So,
Stephen was quoted saying that the digging of the canal was an industrial war against geology.
Yeah, it certainly was. It certainly was, and it was with unheard of technologies at the time. Right, nothing like this had ever been attempted.
Oh yeah, all they had was steam shovels, railroads, dynamite
one
crews.
of the things, for example, which we're going to
dredges.
learn later on here, once construction really started kicking in, right, they were moving so fast that they were being slowed down by their inability to move the railroad tracks to then be able to dig in the next section. That's when they developed
we've all seen the pictures of all the guys.
Yes,
with
and
their
they built those, exactly. And so finally they made those cranes that they developed. They modified some of their own steam shovels to then be able to lift and move track and suddenly expedited that. That became a new technology, a new way of doing things. And it really is fascinating to see how as they progressed, they developed new ways of doing things that made life a lot easier for these guys, because it was, like I said, the Canal Record really was a PR newspaper. It was designed to keep the world at, saying, hey, look what we're doing here, right? It also served as a motivational piece. One of the things that you'll see in the Canal Record as it started coming out, and didn't really come out until 1907 when they realized, what PR could do for them. But this was a weekly newspaper, the Canal Record. And while you're looking at the standings for the Yankees and the Dodgers and everybody else, you're also looking at the standings for the steam shovels and see which one was digging most this week. And that became big bragging rights in the canal. So they made it something that people took a an active interest and
Oh,
ownership.
you're right. That's right. They kept
They
up on
sure
that.
did, because let me
which
tell
of
you
the
what,
3 sides, right?
dude. If I'm part of Steam Shovel 229 and we're on the cusp of breaking that record this month, guess what? I'm getting there a little earlier with my crew to get going.
Yeah,
here.
yeah, you're right.
So
you're right,
it's just
you're
a
right.
great.
I
Great
saw
way to
that too when
motivate
I
them.
researched.
Yeah,
Hey,
what
you
a
did a
fun
good job,
way
Willie.
to construct, man. So yeah,
Good
I'm
job on
excited
your
for this,
homework.
man.
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited to do these. Every month it's just going to be a little piece. We got 10 years of construction. You know, the first year we really had to establish where we were and how we switched over to this new format of working. Next episode, we're going to start looking at how the American component started to come into play, right? They started ordering all those steam shovels and all the larger trains. We're also going to look at the railroad, how they set up the railroad to be running in 2 directions, because that was the one key to this. Those steam shovels, when they were working, did not stop. You literally, as that train moved out, the next one pulled in and you filled that one up, and the next one came in, the next one came. You're talking 2,000 train loads a day. They were moving constantly. So this is where Stevens really cut his teeth. And actually, no, this is where Stevens really brought his expertise in, was as a railroad man.
Correct.
He
And
made
Andrew-
it an efficient. Yes.
Andrew
did.
Eftimanes' museum is going to
It's
display
exactly
it.
going to highlight that, you know. So
Highlighted in miniature form.
yeah, I'm excited for that too. Andrew's doing a great job with that, guys. I'm telling you, when he starts getting ready to start showcasing some of the pictures and videos on it, you're going to be blown away by how professional this looks. Because
Well, you're doing all the video work, right?
yeah, I'm going to work on that for him. Yeah, we're both working on it. He's doing something out there. I mean, I'm like the ICC. I'm up in Washington and he's down in Panama, but we'll figure something out one of these times for sure. So, but anyhow, there was
Good show, Willie, man.
Yeah,
I
it was.
appreciate it. That was awesome.
I had a
man.
lot of
we
fun.
learned
dude.
a lot.
We sure
That
did,
whole that whole coup thing took me by surprise. I
Yeah.
never knew that, man.
I didn't either. It's funny because I saw it and we started talking about it, and I think the same time that you questioned it, I questioned it. I'm like, wait, coup? Wait, I don't remember hearing about that coup.
I never hear about a coup, yeah.
And
Huertas.
yeah,
Now I'm thinking because Huertas is a big name in the whole Canal history.
Right.
But after that, you don't hear Huertas.
Yes.
There's no Huertas
And now you know
town, Huertas Bay. There's no Huertas anything.
right?
in
And
Panama.
now, like Paul Harvey used to say, and now you know the rest of the story. So
Appreciate
but, hey,
it, man. Great show.
Next
great
week,
show.
guys, we're gonna continue. It's Panama Canal month. Okay, so next week, Captain Andrew Eftimates is gonna join us. He's a Panama Canal pilot, BHS class of '83. He's gonna join us, talk about what it's like to pilot a ship through the locks, the old locks, the new locks, answer any questions. Of course, keep us up to speed on what's going on with the canal right now, but that's always a fun episode. And then, of course, later on, the Gatun locks, tugboat pilots, supply and support people. It's going to be an awesome month, guys. I'm looking forward to
I
it.
know.
But,
and before
Ricky,
you
get us
know
outta
it, we
here,
got
man.
Dave back on, and then architect. We're doing architecture on the second week, right, of June?
Second or third, whatever works for you, man.
Whatever works. All right, guys. Thanks.
Take care, guys.
See
Have
you.
a great weekend, everybody. Cheers.